Welcome back into another edition of the Arrowhead Pride Chiefs Training Camp Report. Day 7, full team practice in St. Joseph, Missouri. It was the longest practice of Chiefs camp so far. Andy Reid speaking with the media right now. And we saw a couple of Chiefs return to the practice field on Sunday and just got some bad news from head coach Andy Reid on second-year cornerback Nazeeh Johnson, who unfortunately tore his ACL yesterday in practice. He is going to be out for the entire season. Major bummer for a player who seemed to be ascending and kind of carving out a role for himself with this Kansas City Chiefs team. But I am not joined by Pete Sweeney today. I am joined by lead analyst for arrowheadpride.com, Ron Kopp Jr. Ron, you were up there grinding today. Really long practice in St. Joseph, Missouri.
There were like 2 or 3 separate times I thought practice was over. And then Andy got him back out there for a team period. You could tell the guys were toast by the end of it. Like every starter was on their knee on the sideline. Definitely a long practice, but Pete gave me the. I'm very thankful for Pete because the long practice means lots of takes, Serda. So I got plenty of takes for you.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff that we're going to get into today. Again, long practice, and I thought it seemed like we got some better looks at some guys that we haven't gotten to see do a ton of work. And, especially for defensive players, it's really hard until they get the pads on to really gauge anything from you're seeing from them on the field. So I think we got a good look at some of that stuff today. But as I already mentioned, second-year cornerback Nazeeh Johnson tore his ACL. He is out for the season. Huge bummer for a player from last year's draft class, another 7th-round pick who Dave Tobe called the best gunner in the NFL or one of the best gunners in the NFL on special teams. He was a crucial special teams player for them last year, was going to be that this year, and also seemed to be carving out a role for himself in the secondary. So just a huge bummer for a young player who seemed to be finding and hitting his stride with this team.
Yeah, no, that the Nazeeh Johnson hype wasn't made up. It's not some it's not something that we're creating because he's gotten a few reps. It's because the coaches have went out of their way to work him into the starting defense this training camp. As I've been up here yesterday, actually before the camp got shortened too, I noticed that as the team was kind of walking through their dime defense, the starting defense, it really is just the starters, and then maybe a guy or two that's working behind and just kind of watching and learning, right? One of those guys is Nazeeh Johnson. While the rest of the backups are working somewhere else, the rookies, Chamari Connor somewhere else, Nazeeh Johnson was there working with the defense, listening to Spags kind of teach him what to do. That to me tells me that he was going to be a part of this starting defense, maybe work into that rotation with Joshua Williams and Jalen Watson. And, maybe a practice like today might have shown you a little why. Someone like Joshua Williams had a rough practice today. By my eye, the 7-on-7 period, he kind of got picked on a couple times. And so, yeah, you might be kind of seeing the volatility of the cornerback position, why it's so important to have so many of these guys. And Nazeeh was definitely someone they were excited about. So definitely sucks to see. I hate to hear the ACL. Was hoping to hear something a little more minor or less major than that.
And we know the Chiefs are still deep in the cornerback room, and L'Jarius Sneed returned to practice after being out yesterday. Drew Tranquill also back on the practice field for the Kansas City Chiefs. We do not have Mike Dana, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jody Fortson, who Andy Reid also said his shoulder popped out. So I'm assuming that means he might miss practice for a little bit while they deal with that. Chris Jones still not in attendance. He also mentioned linebacker Isaiah Moore is headed to IR. He's going to have surgery on a knee injury that's bothering him. And then no Kadarius Toney, no Tershawn Wharton. So the Chiefs secondary that I don't think we were expecting a lot out of Nazeeh Johnson, but coming into training camp, it seems like the Kansas City Chiefs were expecting a lot out of him. But they still have a lot of bodies in that cornerback room. I think they still feel good about that cornerback room. But sticking with the safety or with the secondary, Ron, I want to talk about Bryan Cook because he's a player, and the secondary, when we focus on them, I feel like we spend so much time focusing on the Chiefs cornerbacks, and deservedly so because they're a young, interesting, talented group. But Justin Reid has really been hyping himself up his second year in Spags defense. And then Bryan Cook is getting a ton of praise, and he's running with the ones, he's running opposite Justin Reid. And I don't feel like we're spending enough time talking about Bryan Cook. I'm really interested to see how he plays in his second year in this defense.
Well, you called the right person today, Serda, for some Brian Cook hype, because yes, I'm totally with you, man. I'm excited for the ascension of Brian Cook as a player. I think you saw last year some flashes of some really good on-field athletic ability, his range as a safety, how fast he can get to one place on the field. Obviously, he's kind of known as the hard hitter already. He's had a few of those plays in his NFL career so far. But like you mentioned, man, Justin Reed, veteran Mike Edwards, the offseason signing, who he's kind of competing with for a job. I know this team uses plenty of three safety sets, but it was cool to see Mike Edwards, praise him, and he made the comment that Brian Cook doesn't feel like a guy that was just in his rookie season last year. He made that comment earlier this offseason. Mike Edwards did earlier this camp, I should say. And so, yeah, I'm excited for Brian Cook. I think the thing that stands out to him the most, this camp hasn't even been anything he's done on the field. It's been, everyone's talked about how vocal he is as a leader. Spags has mentioned it before. He's, if he's 100% wrong, he's going to make you think he's 100% right. That's the kind of vocal vocality you're going to get out of him. And you've heard it from all his teammates in camp. But in terms of on the field, I saw him make a few plays today in one-on-one. Safeties going against the tight ends. I'm definitely sticking on some guys. And then actually today, too, you kind of saw the toughness and mentality you want from a safety. He actually got either stepped up on or tripped up something. He was limping pretty good after a play towards the end of practice today. It looked like a coach was maybe signaling to get him out and get someone else in, but Cook waved him off and went right into the huddle and played the next play. That's the kind of guy you're getting here. And the thing with the safety position is that's the kind of guy you want, right? A safety's supposed to be tough. He's supposed to be a leader. We'll see how his on-field play, if he's gonna look like Ed Reed out there. We don't know that for sure, but what we do know is that he's gonna be a leader, even as a young player, and a guy that's gonna play his butt off. And so I think those two things are gonna make him easy to root for. And again, I think you can see it right now. He's pretty much solidified himself as the starter. Edwards has not worked in at all with the starters in his place, so it doesn't seem like there's much of competition there.
Yeah, and that's what you want to see from a second-year player that you're expecting a lot out of. So very excited for Brian Cook this season. I think he's got a chance to be a key part of that defense for the Chiefs. And sticking on that side of the ball, I want to talk to you about the Chiefs pass rush. Obviously, Chris Jones still not there. Starting to get a little worried. No end in sight right now as far as contract negotiations go, but he is going to play for the Chiefs this season, and hopefully they work that out at some point. But I want to talk to you about the other guys, the guys that are supposed to be complementary pieces to Chris Jones, but in camp they're getting much more valuable reps with Chris Jones out, and Felix Anudike-Uzomah, their rookie, who has been getting worked in slow. And it's important to remember with him specifically that during rookie minicamp he had thumb surgery, and so the Chiefs were working him back in slow. And then defensive end George Karlaftis, Charles Omenihu, their free agent signing. Like, what did you see from the group of the Chiefs pass rushers on Sunday?
Yeah, no, I want to start with Karlaftis because I did highlight him after Saturday's practice as a guy that's having a solid camp, and I think for obvious reasons. He is kind of just the de facto leader of the group with Chris Jones not there. He's the first guy in every line for every drill. He's taken every first team rep there is to take. He has not been subbed out once, for being a starter. And I actually did like what I saw from him yesterday in 1v1 pass rush drills going up against right tackle Jawan Taylor. I think Karlaftis, we saw towards the end of the year, obviously having that stretch of play where he had the 6.5 sacks over 7 games or whatever it was. You kind of saw his technique, his ability as a pass rusher become more consistent, more clean. It just seemed like he was getting his technique down quite a bit during the end of his rookie season. But what I'm kind of noticing in his play during camp so far is he's starting to add a dip and a bend around the edge that, I think a lot of people were skeptical if he could add that to his game coming out of Purdue as a first-round pick. He was kind of known as that, maybe a power rusher only kind of guy. I think you're seeing him add a little bit of finesse to his game that's going to help him as the team does try to find the second best pass rusher besides Jones. But I do want to say, though, that I noticed that, but then I come into practice today, and you mentioned Felix, our first-round pick. I have not been able to see much of him throughout practice, but today I noticed him much more, and it was nice to get a good look of him. He was playing a lot with the second team today. And he kind of made me realize, okay, this is why I was excited about Felix in the context of this room. You watch Karlaftis rush. He's very clean. He's very straight up. Very clean technique. Felix just has some moves to him, man, that I don't think Karlaftis even has in his repertoire yet. He had a push and pull against Wanye Morris today. It looked really good going around the outside. It would have been maybe a sack if Wanye didn't pull him up a little bit. Could have been a holding call too. And then he had another rep I saw going against Prince Tega Winogo. Obviously, these aren't the starting offensive tackles, but I think Felix has had a quiet start to camp. But I think today he showed why he's a first-round pick, why this team could use him as a pass rusher right away, even if he's not playing a ton of snaps. Maybe he's still on pass rush downs right away because he has these moves to him, and he has this pass rush ability to him that maybe Karlaftis does not naturally. So those two, I was excited to see, things for them both in days this weekend. And then Charles Omenihu, he's got some work to do as an edge rusher, man. His bread is butter as an inside rusher, as a defensive tackle on third downs. It is not as a true edge rusher off the edge, and you're kind of seeing that. I think he's getting caught up a lot with Donovan Smith and Juwan Taylor, two veterans that have handled him pretty well. And so I think you're going to see his best moves come from the inside, which, that is something that we need to see. We need to see if Jones isn't going to show up, someone attack from the inside. And so Omenihu's definitely that guy, but definitely a lot to be desired with his edge rushing skills. I think that was kind of something we already knew coming into camp, but has been confirmed this weekend to me.
Yeah, and on Omenihu, like we saw last year with the San Francisco 49ers, like he is better coming from the inside and being that guy that can kind of move around the defensive line. And so the Chiefs have been pretty upfront that that's how they expect to use him. But if they get a lot out of George, if they get a lot out of Felix this season, and then you get Chris Jones in the building at some point, which will happen eventually, then you're feeling pretty good about the Chiefs pass rush. And Felix, again, I think him starting so slow in camp, one, it's because the camp has just been really long, and it's a really long Chiefs camp. It started early because they opened the NFL season. He had the offseason thumb surgery after the Chiefs drafted him, and they were working him back in slow. So I think a little bit of the panic, like, oh, all these guys are making plays up at training camp, we haven't heard a peep out of Felix. Like, I don't think any of that was warranted. So I think moving forward, today was the longest practice again, and moving forward, we're going to see them get a lot more work, and I think we're going to see a lot more from him. So don't chalk him up as a bust just yet. He's got a long way to go to make an impact for this defense. And you mentioned Juwan Taylor and Donovan Smith, and this is something I kind of been talking to Pete about, but it's something that's kind of hard to gauge until they get the pads on and they're out there with these long practices and they're hitting and they're getting angry and aggressive. Like, will you just give us an update on the offensive line and specifically how the Chiefs' new tackles have looked?
Man, I feel good. I really like what I've seen from the offensive tackles so far in camp, these two padded practices. Juwan Taylor, I mean, you're seeing the quickness in his footwork that really just makes it. He just looks so calm and easy dropping back in his pass set and swallowing up these attempts from Karlaftis and Omenihu to convert their speed rush to a power and kind of go through him. He just swallows them up, and he's too quick for them to get around the edge to the outside too. I think Taylor has really impressed as a pass protector specifically, but Donovan Smith has too to me to an extent now. Felix actually got him today in 1v1s with a pretty nice little inside move, set him up outside, and then came back in and did get into the pocket 1v1s. Again, 1v1s are always going to be set up for the defensive line to win a little more. But the thing with Donovan Smith that I noticed today and was actually like a very emphasized point in the Chiefs' offensive work today, they were running a lot of outside toss plays, getting the running back out into space towards the sideline. And that meant Donovan Smith and Juwan Taylor both kind of getting out in space and leading the way. And that's the thing is Orlando Brown Jr., as much as he's had those kind of plays, right, where we've seen him bulldoze guys down the field, he doesn't have that foot quickness to consistently trust him out in space. He's going to get beat to the spots a lot of times if he's not fresh, if it's a little later in the game. I think you don't have that as much with Juwan Taylor and Donovan Smith too. I know Donovan Smith's an older guy, a guy that I think a lot of people look at as a veteran, maybe older in his career. He moves well when he's healthy, man. He had some injuries last year that maybe slowed him down, but he was moving very well today. But again, back to Taylor, he also had a play where he buried Leo Chenal out in space on a toss play in the red zone. I'm liking what I'm seeing from both offensive tackle in their movement skills, both in pass protection and the run blocking. I think pass protection, that might be one thing that they missed with Orlando Brown Jr. last year is having that quick-footed, that's going to swallow up the speed rush, right? That's going that's going to consistently, negate the speed rush from getting around the edge. I think Taylor has that skill to him on the right side. Smith, I think, is going to be a little more susceptible, but I still think I like what I'm seeing in terms of his movement skills compared to Orlando Brown.
And a couple other offensive players who, one, Justin Ross manages to keep going viral from the Chiefs social media team, but continues to look impressive in training camp and make plays. And another is rookie undrafted running back Deneric Prince, who, according to virtually everyone who's on the field at training camp practice in St. Joseph, Missouri, he does not ever drop a pass. He's already the Chiefs starting kick returner. He is already set in stone on this roster. Just did what did you see from those two specific players today on the practice field?
Yeah, Justin Ross is someone that I really needed him to show me and prove it to me. And so far in camp, he's proven what I think a lot of people thought he was, and what I thought he was is a good outside receiver. He's going to go up and get it on the perimeter. He's got the speed and the ability at his size to be a pretty good route runner. So I don't think he's proven any more than we kind of already thought he could be if he was healthy. And so it's been good to see Justin Ross just be healthy, be that player that a lot of people thought he could be. I'm excited to see him in a game and see if he could really, turn it up in that way. But Deneric Prince, man, he's in terms of the fantasy football world, there's no more sleepers anymore. And he would have been a perfect one if there were, because, his ability in the pass game has just continued to be crazily impressive. I mean, he had one today in the red zone. I think Gabbert was the one who put it up to him, kind of a back shoulder throw. It's a catch you'd see a receiver make, and you'd never even guess a rookie running back. You'd never expect them to make. And he turns around and makes it, with a guy on him pretty close. So I think Deneric Prince, the reason he is so exciting is because for his size, he's a guy that's got some pretty good size, some build to him that's going to be harder to tackle. But he's really good as a pass catcher too. And obviously in the Chiefs offense, that's going to be important. So yeah, Deneric Prince living up to every kind of hype he could right now. There's not really, he can't be overstated with the impact he's had on the offense right now.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of optimism around Deneric Prince, and he's carving out a role for himself, and everyone has just raved about his performance so far in training camp. So we're talking about back-to-back years here where the Chiefs get a starting running back in Isaiah Pacheco in the 7th round, undrafted free agent in Deneric Prince, and Pacheco's still working his way back from the offseason surgeries. He's getting worked in slowly, but Chiefs seem very optimistic he's going to be ready to go by week 1. And I think it's safe to say that Deneric Prince has carved himself out a role on this roster in some capacity. But before we get out of here, Ron, any other standouts, observations, anything you want to mention from Sunday's practice?
I do want to give out 2 more names for you guys. First on offense, I think tight end Matt Bushman is going to push this tight end room to the limit in terms of Jody Fortson. Is he actually a lock for this roster? I know his shoulder popped out, and so he's not on the field right now. But Matt Bushman, man, has continued to make plays. Matt Nagy made a comment recently that he doesn't drop anything. And I've been out here for 3 days, and he has yet to prove me wrong on that. I saw him make a very impressive reaching grab, kind of almost with one hand over the middle today in 1v1s. So Bushman, I think you guys got to watch, keep an eye on him. He may unseat Jody Fortson for that third tight end, that kind of playmaker in the tight end room. He's not the biggest guy, so he's not going to be a blocker. So I don't think he's necessarily taking Blake Bell's role or anything. But man, as a catcher, as a receiver, Jody Fortson's had an inconsistent camp even before he got hurt. So shout out Matt Bushman. I think he's really pushing the limit there. And then I do want to shout out Malik Herring as well. We talked about the pass rush. I didn't get to mention him, but he just looks like he belongs. I think Malik Herring is going to have a spot on this team, and it's going to be a reason why they don't bring in a Carlos Dunlap that Pete has kind of speculated recently with his roster projection. I think Malik Herring has been such a solid player, guy who played inside out, gave them some solid snaps last year as well for the 53-man roster. Watch for Malik Herring. I think he's going to kind of round out the defensive line room, and I think you're going to feel good about it. He has some upside to him as a young player. I think it's his 3rd year with the Chiefs now. I think he's a guy that's going to make the team feel good about not adding to this defensive line before the season starts.
He's Ron Kopp. You can follow him on Twitter at Ron_Kopp, lead analyst for arrowheadpride.com. Make sure you're checking out all of our training camp coverage over at the website. As always, please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review everything that we are doing right here on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network. Chiefs are back on the practice field on Monday before having an off day on Tuesday. We will talk to you